Captain Jake Morrison pressed his face against the cold metal of the observation window. Far below him, thousands of alien beings moved around like colorful ants in a giant glass bowl. The space station Harmony Prime was the size of a small moon, and right now, it held representatives from 47 different worlds. Jake had never seen so many different kinds of life in one place. There were the tall, thin ethereals who looked like walking smoke. The Silicon Lords moved like giant metal. Spiders across the station floors. In the water-filled sections, the depth singers swam in graceful circles, their songs making the walls vibrate. "They are all scared," said Ambassador Lisa Carter as she walked up behind Jake. She carried a thick folder full of papers and looked tired. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her blue uniform was wrinkled from 3 days of non-stop meetings. Jake turned away from the window. "Can you blame them? I've seen the reports about these void hunters. They eat planets for breakfast." Lisa sat down in one of the chairs nearby. The furniture was built for humans, which made their small section of the station feel like home. Most other areas had to accommodate beings that were much larger, smaller, or completely different shapes than people. "The meeting starts again in an hour," Lisa said. "Every species wants to run away to a different galaxy. The crystalline chancellors are talking about hiding in their underground cities for the next 1,000 years. The cloud dancers want to drift to the far edge of space where nobody can find them." Jake sat down across from her. "What about the military reports?" "Dr. Phillips has been studying their ships for weeks. Sam thinks he found a weakness, but nobody wants to hear it. They are too busy planning their escape routes." Lisa opened her folder and pulled out several photos. The images showed massive black ships that looked like metal sharks with too many teeth. Jake picked up one of the photos. The Void Hunter ship was bigger than any human city. Its surface was covered with weapons and what looked like giant metal, mouths for eating planets. "How many of these things are there?" The scouts counted over 10,000 ships, maybe more hiding behind the big ones. Lisa rubbed her forehead. The other species have never seen anything like this. For them, the Void Hunters are like a nightmare that came to life. Down in the main assembly hall, the debates were getting louder. Jake could hear the translator systems working overtime as different species argued in sounds that ranged from musical notes to electronic beeping. The human section was quiet compared to everyone else. Commander Kate Williams walked into the room carrying a data tablet. Her black hair was cut short in military style, and she moved with the quick steps of someone who had important news. "Message from Earth," Kate said. "The President wants to know if we need more ships. The orbital shipyards can have another 50 vessels ready in 6 months. Lisa looked surprised. "Kate, we only brought 12 ships to this meeting. Most species brought hundreds." "That is because most species think like prey animals," Kate said. She sat down and showed them her tablet screen. "I have been watching the other delegations for 3 days. When they see a threat, their first thought is to run away or hide. Do not think about fighting back." Jake stood up and walked back. To the window. Below, he could see a group of floating gardens representatives arguing with some Silicon Lords. The gaseous beings were changing colors rapidly, which meant they were upset. The metal spider creatures were clicking their legs. On the floor, in what Jake had learned, was their version of nervous laughter. "In 20 minutes, they will ask each species to vote," Lisa said. "The question is simple. Should the galaxy evacuate, or should we try to fight the Void Hunters?" "What will the vote be?" Jake asked. 46 species will vote to evacuate. They'll want to pack up their most important people and run to another galaxy. I think that is the only way to survive." Kate looked up from her tablet. "And what? Will we vote?" Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled in a way that made Jake think of his old grandfather, who had been a soldier in 3 different wars. "We will vote to fight. And then we will watch every other species look at us like we have lost our minds." Dr. Sam Phillips walked into the room at that moment. He was a thin man with thick glasses who looked more like a teacher than a military strategist. But Jake knew that Sam had one of the smartest minds in the human fleet. "I finished analyzing the Void Hunter movement patterns," Sam said. He was carrying a large tablet covered with charts and numbers. These machines have been following the same basic program for over 1,000 years. They expect their prey to run away. What happens if the prey does not run away? Jake asked. Sam pushed his glasses up his nose. That is the interesting part. Their programming does not have good responses for aggressive behavior. Something attacks them, instead of running, they have to fall back on very basic defensive routines. Lisa stood up and gathered her papers. Sam, I need you to explain. That 246 different species in about 15 minutes. Think you can do that? I can try. But I do not think they will listen. Most of these species have never had to fight for their survival. They've been living in peaceful space for so long that they forgot how to be dangerous. Kate laughed. That is their problem, not ours. Humans have been dangerous since we learned how to throw rocks at wild animals. The call for the next session echoed through their section of the station. Lisa picked up her papers and headed for the door. The others followed her toward the assembly hall. As they walked through the corridors, Jake noticed how the other species moved. The ethereals floated along the walls, trying to stay as far away from solid beings as possible. The silicon lords rolled on mechanical wheels, their metal bodies making grinding sounds. Even the bravest species, like the crystal singers, moved in tight groups for protection. The humans walked in a straight line down the middle of the corridor. They did not try to avoid other beings or stick to the walls. Jake realized that this simple difference said a lot about how humans saw the world compared to everyone else. The assembly hall was enormous. It had been built to hold representatives. From hundreds of different species, though, only 47 were part of the current coalition. The ceiling was so high that small flying beings could circle around near the top without bothering anyone else. Each species had their own section, with furniture and environmental controls suited to their needs. The human section was small, but positioned where they could see everything that happened in the center of the hall as Lisa walked down to the speaking area. Jake watched the reactions of the other delegates. The depth singers had stopped their musical conversations and were staring at the human ambassador. The cloud dancers were shifting colors in what Jake had learned meant confusion and concern. Lisa reached the center platform and activated the translation system. Her voice would now be heard by every being in the hall, converted into sounds, colors, chemical signals, or whatever each species used for communication. Members of the Galactic Coalition, Lisa began. We have heard many plans today for how to survive the return of the Void Hunters. Some want to evacuate to other galaxies. Others want to hide in deep space or underground cities. All of these plans have one thing in common. She paused and looked around the hall. Every being in the massive room was focused on her words. They are all based on fear, Lisa continued. And fear makes us weak. Fear makes us predictable. Fear is exactly what the Void Hunters expect from us. Jake could see the reaction rippling through the assembly. Some species were translating her words to each other in confused whispers. Others were making the sounds or movements that meant disagreement in their cultures. Lisa raised her voice slightly. Humanity has a different proposal. Instead of running away from the Void Hunters, we suggest that we attack them first. The hall erupted in chaos. Every species began talking at once in their own languages. The translation system gave up trying to handle everything and just broadcast a mix of electronic noise, musical sounds, and chemical odor signals. Jake smiled as he watched the pandemonium. This was going exactly as they had expected. The other species stood frozen in disbelief, but the humans were ready to take the first step forward. 3 days passed before the Galactic Coalition could meet again. The chaos from Lisa Carter's proposal had been so complete that several species needed time just to understand what the humans had suggested. The floating gardens had actually dispersed into gas clouds and needed 2 full days to pull themselves back together. Jake Morrison stood in the human quarters, watching news feeds from across the galaxy. Every species was talking about the crazy proposal from Earth. The crystal singers had composed a mourning song for humanity, assuming they had all gone insane. The deep swimmers were holding prayer ceremonies in their underwater cities, asking their gods to give the humans wisdom. They think we have lost our minds, Commander Kate Williams said as she read reports on her tablet. The ethereal collective sent a message saying they will preserve human culture in their memory banks after we all get ourselves killed. Dr. Sam Phillips looked up from his tactical displays. Maybe we should be flattered. Most species just ignore cultures they think are doomed. At least they want to remember us. Lisa Carter sat at the table in the center of the room, preparing for the second session. She had spent 3 days answering the same questions over and over again. How could humans think about attacking the Void Hunters? Did they not understand how powerful the enemy was? Were they suffering from some kind of mental disease? The vote will happen today, Lisa said. Every species will present their final position, and then we will see what the galaxy decides to do. Jake sat down across from her. Any chance the others will listen to Sam's analysis about the Void Hunter weaknesses? Some of them might. The Silicon Lords are at least willing to look at the tactical data. But most species are too scared too. Think clearly. Colonel Ben Martinez entered the room carrying a datapad full of military reports. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of combat training. His family had been soldiers for 5 generations, and he understood war better than most people understood peace. I got the latest intel from our scout ships, Ben said. The Void Hunter fleet is still moving slowly toward the inner systems. They are consuming small asteroids and empty planets as they travel. So far, they have not attacked any inhabited worlds. Why not? Kate asked. Sam pushed his glasses up his nose, because they do not need to yet. The Void Hunters are not angry or emotional. They are just machines following a program. Right now, their program says to gather energy and resources before starting the main attack. How long do we have? Lisa asked. Based on their current speed, about 8 months before, they reach the outer colonies of the major species. 2 years before they get to the core worlds like Earth? Lisa nodded. That gives us time to prepare if the galaxy agrees to fight. Engineer Amy Foster walked into the room carrying a cup of coffee and looking frustrated. She had been working with the station's technical staff to understand alien technology, but most species were not willing to share military information with the humans. I tried to get specifications for their weapons and ships, Amy said. The crystalline chancellors just laughed at me. They said humans are too primitive to understand their technology anyway. Ben smiled grimly. Let them think that. Make things easier later if they underestimate us. The call for the assembly session echoed through their quarters. Lisa gathered her papers and stood up. This is it. Today we find out if the galaxy will fight or run. As they walked through the station corridors toward the assembly hall, Jake noticed that the other species were avoiding them even more than before. A group of cloud dancers actually changed direction when they saw the humans coming. Some Silicon Lords moved to the far side of the corridor and watched them pass with glowing optical sensors. They are scared of us now, Kate observed. Not just confused, actually frightened. Good, Ben said. If our allies are scared of us, imagine how the enemies will feel. The assembly hall was packed with representatives from all 47 species. But today the atmosphere was different. Instead of chaotic arguing, there was a tense quiet. Everyone was waiting to hear what each species would say about the human proposal. The session began with the Ethereal Collective. Their representative was a shimmering cloud of light that spoke in musical tones. The translation system converted their words into human language. The Ethereal Collective has decided to evacuate our core worlds and establish new colonies in the Andromeda Galaxy. We will take our most important cultural artifacts and technologies. We invite all other species to join us in this exodus. Next came the Silicon Lords. Their delegate was a spider-like machine the size of a small car. It moved to the speaking platform on 8 metal legs that clicked against the floor. The Silicon Lords will construct massive defensive barriers around our home systems. We will wait inside these fortifications until the Void Hunters move on to other targets. Our analysis shows a 63% probability of survival using this strategy. One by one, each species presented their plan. The Depth Singers wanted to hide in the deepest ocean worlds where sound traveled strangely and might confuse the enemy sensors. The Crystal Singers planned to use their music to put their entire population into suspended animation until the threat passed. The floating gardens disperse across empty space as individual gas molecules, hoping the Void Hunters would not notice them. The Dreamweavers intended to retreat into their mental dimension where physical beings could not follow them. Every plan was the same basic idea: run away, hide, or wait for someone else to deal with the problem. Finally, it was humanity's turn. Lisa walked to the speaking platform and looked around the enormous hall. Thousands of alien beings stared at her with eyes, sensors, and other organs humans did not even have names for. 3 days ago, I told you that humanity proposes to attack the Void Hunters, Lisa began. Many of you thought this was impossible. Some of you thought we were insane. Today I want to explain why fighting back is not just possible, but necessary. She activated a holographic display that showed an image of Earth. The blue and green planet rotated slowly above the speaking platform. This is our homeworld. Most of you have visited Earth, and you all know what kind of place it is. Your scientists call it a death world. The gravity is too strong. The weather is too violent. The native life forms are too aggressive. You need protective suits just to walk on our surface. The hall was completely quiet. Even species that did not normally pay attention to other delegates were focused on Lisa's words. Humans evolved on this death world. We learned to survive in a place that would kill most of you in hours. We learned to hunt animals that were bigger and stronger than us. We've learned to work together against threats that could destroy our entire tribes. Jake watched the reactions around the hall. Some species were making sounds of understanding. Others were shifting in ways that meant they were uncomfortable, but listening. Dr. Phillips has analyzed the Void Hunter fleet, Lisa continued. He has found something important. These machines have been using the same tactics for over 1,000 years. They attack worlds that cannot fight back. They consume populations that run away or surrender. They have never faced an organized military response from species that refuse to give up. Sam walked to the platform carrying his tactical display. The hologram showed the formation of Void Hunter ships and their movement patterns. The enemy fleet follows predictable routes, Sam explained. Their ships move in formations designed to intimidate rather than to fight effectively. Their weapons are built for destroying planets and harvesting resources, not for combat against military vessels that shoot back. Most importantly, Lisa added, their programming assumes that all organic life will try to preserve itself above everything else. They expect us to run away when threatened. They expect us to negotiate when cornered. They expect us to surrender when outnumbered. She paused and looked around the hall again. Humans do not always do what is expected. Amy stepped forward with technical specifications displayed on her tablet. Human ships are smaller and faster than Void Hunter vessels. Our weapons are designed for precision strikes rather than mass destruction. We cannot match their firepower, but we can outmaneuver them. Ben joined the group at the platform. Human military doctrine is based on coordinated attacks using multiple small units. We do not rely on massive single weapons or overwhelming force. We use speed, surprise, and tactical flexibility. The Void Hunters have never encountered an enemy that uses these tactics, Lisa said. Their programming has no effective responses to coordinated attacks by ships that refuse to retreat. The hall erupted in discussion again, but this time it was different. Instead of panic, there was actual debate. Some species were asking technical questions about human military capabilities. Others were discussing whether the analysis of Void Hunter weaknesses was accurate. The crystalline chancellor sent a representative to the speaking platform. The being was made of living crystal that reflected light in rainbow patterns as it moved. The chancellors have reviewed the human tactical data, the crystal being said. We find the analysis to be mathematically sound. However, we calculate that the probability of success is still less than 30%. 6 months after the vote at Harmony Prime, the Earth system looked like a giant metal beehive. Ships moved in every direction around the orbital shipyards. Cargo vessels carried weapons and supplies between the construction platforms. Workers in spacesuits crawled over the hulls of new warships like busy ants. Admiral Chris Turner stood on the bridge of the Independence, watching the final preparations through the main viewing screen. The massive carrier was the largest ship humanity had ever built, stretching nearly 2 kilometers from front to back. Around it floated the pride of Earth's space fleet, 30 destroyers, 15 cruisers, and dozens of smaller support vessels. Final ship count, Admiral, reported Lieutenant Rachel Brooks from the communications station. She was young, but had the best technical skills in the fleet. We have 73 combat vessels ready for departure, plus 42 supply ships and transport vessels. Chris nodded as he studied the tactical displays. Each ship was a miracle of human engineering and determination. 6 months ago, most of these vessels had been cargo haulers or exploration ships. Now they bristled with weapons and armor plating. Any word from the other coalition species? Chris asked. Rachel checked her console. The Crystal Singers sent another message asking us to reconsider. The Silicon Lords are sharing intelligence about Void Hunter movements, but refuse to commit any ships. The Floating Gardens are still convinced we are all going to die. What about the evacuation fleets? Most species have already started moving their populations toward the galaxy edge. The Ethereals are loading their city ships. The Cloud Dancers are dispersing their colonies. Everyone is getting ready to run. General Paul Davis walked onto the bridge carrying a thick folder of reports. He was responsible for coordinating the ground operations that would happen after the fleet engaged the enemy. His weathered face showed the strain of months of preparation. Latest intelligence from our advanced teams, Paul said. Sergeant Hayes and her Special Forces units have established contact with resistance groups on 12 different worlds that the Void Hunters have already consumed. Chris turned from the viewing screen. Resistance groups. I thought the Void Hunters killed everything. On the planets they attacked, they do kill most of the population, Paul explained. But some people always manage to hide in deep caves, underwater facilities, or underground bunkers. The Void Hunters are machines. They do not think like living beings, so they miss hiding spots that seem obvious to organic minds. How many survivors are we talking about? Small groups? Maybe a few hundred people per world? But they know the terrain, and they have been watching Void Hunter operations for months. Sergeant Hayes says they are eager to help when we attack. Dr. Sarah Kim entered the bridge from the research section, followed by engineer Tony Clark. Sarah had been studying captured Void Hunter technology for months, trying to understand how the machines worked. Tony had been using her research too, develop new weapons and tactics. We finished testing the new plasma torpedoes, Tony announced. They work exactly like we hoped. The Void Hunter ships have heavy armor, but their internal systems are not well protected against energy surges. Sarah activated a holographic display showing the inside of a Void Hunter vessel. The machines use a distributed network for their computer systems. If we can overload one section with an energy pulse, it causes cascade failures throughout the entire ship. How many ships can we disable with this method? Chris asked. Each plasma torpedo can take out one Void Hunter vessel if we hit the right target area, Tony said. The problem is getting close enough to make accurate shots. Their ships have powerful defensive systems. Chris studied the tactical information. What about the resistance groups General Davis mentioned? Can they help with targeting? Paul smiled grimly. That is exactly what I was hoping you would ask. Our Special Forces teams have been training the survivors to use portable targeting lasers. When we attack, they can mark specific targets on Void Hunter ships from the ground. Lieutenant Colonel Dan Miller appeared on the bridge communications screen. He was commanding the advanced reconnaissance fleet that had been observing the Void Hunters for weeks. Admiral, we have new intelligence on enemy fleet movements, Dan reported. The Void Hunters have started consuming inhabited worlds. Hit the outer colonies of the Depthsinger civilization 3 days ago. The bridge became quiet. Everyone knew this meant the real war had begun. Casualties? Chris asked. Complete destruction of 2 colony worlds. Approximately 4 million Depthsingers killed. The survivors are retreating to their core systems. But the Void Hunter fleet is following them. Rachel worked at her communications console. Sir, I am getting emergency messages from multiple species. The Crystal Singers are asking for immediate evacuation assistance. The Silicon Lords are activating their defensive barriers. Chris walked to the center of the bridge and activated the ship-wide communication system. His voice would now be heard by every person in the human fleet. Attention all vessels. The Void Hunters have begun their main assault on the inhabited systems of the galaxy. As of today, we are no longer preparing for war. We are at war. Pause to let that information settle in.
Ow.
Every person in this fleet volunteered to be here. Every ship in this formation was built by people who believed that fighting back was better than running away. Today we prove that humanity does not abandon its friends when they are in trouble. Dr. Sarah Kim spoke up from her station. Admiral, there is something else you should know about the Void Hunter attack patterns. They are not just killing populations randomly. They are targeting species that have advanced technology or military capabilities first. What does that mean? It means they see some species as bigger threats than others. The Depth Singers have powerful sonic weapons. The Crystal Singers can manipulate matter at the atomic level. The Silicon Lords have advanced defensive systems. Tony nodded. The Void Hunters are eliminating the most dangerous opponents first, then they will clean up the weaker species later. Chris understood immediately, which means they will come for Earth sooner rather than later. Exactly. Our spy networks indicate that human technology and military doctrine have been classified as high-priority threats by the Void Hunter analysis systems. General Davis stepped forward. That actually works in our favor. If they come to Earth, we will be fighting on familiar ground with supply lines and reinforcements available. But it also means we cannot wait for the perfect moment to attack, Chris said. If we give them time to destroy the other military powers in the galaxy, we will be facing them alone. Rachel looked up from her console. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Depth Singer Emergency Government. They are asking if humanity will honor the Coalition Mutual Defense Agreements. Chris did not hesitate. Send a reply. Tell them that the human fleet is already moving to assist them. We will engage the Void Hunters within 72 hours. Bridge crew began the complex process of preparing the fleet for departure. Navigation officers calculated jump routes to the Depth Singer systems. Weapons officers ran final checks on the new plasma torpedoes. Engineering teams made sure every ship could maintain maximum speed for extended periods. Commander Jeff Stone appeared on the communication screen from his fighter squadron. Admiral, my pilots are ready for deployment. We have practiced the new attack formations for weeks. The fighters can get through Void Hunter defensive screens if the capital ships provide covering fire. How confident are you in the new tactics? Chris asked. Very confident, sir. The Void Hunters expect enemies to attack in large formation groups. Our fighters will attack in small teams from multiple directions. Their targeting systems cannot handle that many individual threats at once. Pilot Maria Santos joined Jeff on the screen. She was the best fighter pilot in the human fleet and had volunteered to lead the most dangerous missions. Admiral, the pilots understand that this is a one-way trip for some of us. We are prepared for that. Chris felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders. In a few hours, he would be ordering thousands of people into battle against an enemy that had destroyed entire civilizations. Many of them would not survive. All department heads, report to the war room in 1 hour, Chris announced. We need to finalize the attack plan. As the senior officers left the bridge, Chris remained at the viewing screen, watching the Earth's fleet prepare for departure. Below them, the blue and green planet continued its peaceful rotation. Most of the people down there were going about their normal lives, unaware that their survival depended on what happened in the next few days. Lieutenant Brooks remained at her station, monitoring communications from across the galaxy. Admiral, the other Coalition species are watching us. I am receiving observation requests from 17 different governments. They want to see what happens when we engage the Void Hunters. Are any of them offering to help? No, sir, but they are not running away either. The Crystal Singers have delayed their evacuation. The Silicon Lords are keeping their fleets in defensive positions instead of retreating. I think they are hoping we might actually succeed. Chris smiled grimly. No pressure at all. The battle began with a single human ship charging directly into the heart of the Void Hunter fleet. Captain Ryan Cooper sat in the command chair of the Corvette Defiance, watching the massive enemy vessels grow larger on his screen with each passing second. His crew of 30 volunteers had known from the beginning that this would be a one-way mission. Target locked on the Central Command ship, reported his weapons officer, Lieutenant Kim Walsh. Their communication array is directly ahead of us. Ryan felt his heart beating faster as they approached the enemy formation. The Void Hunter ships were enormous compared to his small corvette. Each one was the size of a city and covered with weapons that could destroy planets. But Dr. Phillips had been right about their weakness. The mechanical mines were following the same patterns they had used for 1,000 years. "They are not firing at us yet," observed Navigator Pete Johnson. "They think we are running away toward their fleet by mistake. Or they think we are trying to surrender," added Engineer Lisa Torres from her station. "Their programming probably does not have protocols for ships that attack alone." The Void Hunter fleet was arranged exactly as Dr. Phillips had predicted. The largest vessels formed a protective circle around their central command ship. Smaller combat vessels patrolled the outer edges of the formation. Everything was designed to capture and process fleeing enemies, not to fight against attackers. Distance. "To target, 30 seconds, Kim reported. "All systems ready for ramming speed." Ryan activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. In 30 seconds, we are going to hit that command ship harder than anything has." "Ever been hit before?" "It has been an honor serving with all of you." Through the main viewer, they could see the detailed surface of the Void Hunter command vessel. It was covered with massive metal plates, sensor arrays, and communication towers that reached out like the arms of a giant metal spider. The ship was so large that Ryan could not see where it ended. 10 seconds, Kim announced. 5 seconds. Packed in 3, 2, 1. The Defiance struck the communication array at full speed. The small human ship was completely destroyed in the collision, but the explosion tore apart the central communication tower and sent electrical surges throughout the Void Hunter command systems. Admiral Chris Turner watched the sacrifice of the Defiance from the bridge of the Independence, 10,000 kilometers away. For a moment, the entire Void Hunter fleet stopped moving as their communication systems tried to handle the damage. "Now," Chris ordered. The human fleet attacked from 6 different directions at once. Commander Jeff Stone led his fighter squadrons. Through the gaps between the enemy ships, the destroyers and cruisers opened fire with their new plasma torpedoes. The support vessels launched waves of smaller missiles that confused the Void Hunter targeting systems. Lieutenant Rachel Brooks monitored the enemy communications from her station. "Sir, their coordination is breaking down. The individual ships are trying to respond to our attacks, but they cannot talk to each other effectively." On the surface of the nearest planet, Sergeant Linda Hayes watched the space battle through her tactical binoculars. Around her, 200 human Special Forces soldiers were hidden in caves and ruined buildings. They had been waiting for weeks for this moment. "Targeting lasers ready," reported Corporal Alex Johnson over the radio. "We have clear shots at the resource processing ships." Linda activated her own laser designator and aimed it at the largest Void Hunter vessel that was strip mining the planet's surface. "All teams, mark your targets. Let our ships know where to aim." Hundreds of invisible laser beams reached up from the planet's surface toward the enemy ships. On the Independence, the targeting computers immediately detected the signals and relayed the information to the human fleet. Perfect targeting data from the ground teams, announced Weapons Officer Mark Torres. Firing plasma torpedoes at designated targets. The new weapons worked exactly as Dr. Kim and Engineer Clark had predicted. When the plasma torpedoes hit the Void Hunter ships, they sent massive energy surges through the mechanical systems. Ships that had been operating perfectly for centuries suddenly found their computers failing and their weapons shutting down. Commander Stone led his fighter squadron through the enemy formation like he was flying through a metal forest. The Void Hunter ships were so large that small fighters could actually fly between their hull sections and attack from inside their defensive perimeter. "Blue Squadron, target the mining operations," Stone ordered over the radio. "Red Squadron, hit their manufacturing ships. Do not let them repair the damage we are causing." Pilot Maria Santos dove her fighter toward a Void Hunter processing ship that was trying to escape toward deep space. "This one is trying to run away," she reported. Weapons locked on target. Her missiles struck the enemy ship's engine section. causing it to tumble out of control. Massive vessel crashed into two other Void Hunter ships, creating a chain reaction of collisions and explosions. General Paul Davis coordinated the ground operations from his command ship. All resistance. Teams, begin your attacks now. Hit their ground installations while they are distracted by the space battle. On 12 different worlds, small groups of survivors emerged from hiding places and attacked Void Hunter mining equipment. They used weapons and explosives that human special forces had smuggled to them over the past months. The mechanical beings had never prepared for coordinated attacks from populations they thought were already dead. Lieutenant Colonel Dan Miller led a squadron of destroyers in a direct attack on the Void Hunter command ship. The massive vessel was trying to rebuild its communication systems, but the human ships kept hitting it with focused plasma bursts. Their main computer core is exposed, reported his tactical officer. If we can get a direct hit on that section, we might be able to shut down their entire coordination network. Dan's ship fired 3 plasma torpedoes at the same time. All 3 weapons hit the target area and sent energy surges deep into the Void Hunter command ship. For a moment, every enemy vessel in the system stopped moving completely. Dr. Sarah Kim monitored the battle from the Independence's science station. Admiral, the Void Hunter ships are showing signs of systematic failure. Our distributed computer network is having trouble handling the damage we are causing. How long can they operate without their central coordination? Chris asked. Unknown. Sir, this is the first time anyone has ever damaged their command systems like this. They are probably trying to activate backup protocols that have not been used for centuries. The battle continued for 3 hours. Human ships darted between the much larger enemy vessels, hitting critical systems and avoiding direct confrontations. The Void Hunters tried to respond with their overwhelming firepower, but their targeting systems could not handle so many small, fast-moving targets attacking from all directions. Engineer Tony Clark monitored the weapon systems from his station. Admiral, we are running low on plasma torpedoes. Each ship only carried a limited number of the new weapons. Conventional weapons are not very effective against their armor, Chris replied. We need to make every shot count. The turning point came when Commander Stone's fighters discovered something unexpected. While attacking a Void Hunter manufacturing ship, they found that the enemy vessel was actually trying to build new combat units to replace the ones being destroyed in battle. Admiral, this changes everything, Stone reported over the radio. These ships are not just weapons, they're mobile factories. If we can capture one intact, we might be able to understand how their technology works. Chris made a quick decision. All ships, new priority target. We need to disable that manufacturing ship without destroying it. Marines, prepare for boarding operations. The most dangerous part of the battle began as human soldiers prepared to actually enter a Void Hunter ship. Nobody knew what they would find inside the mechanical vessels. But the intelligence value was too important to ignore. Major Robert Lane led the boarding team as their transport ship approached the disabled Void Hunter vessel. All teams, remember the briefings. These machines have been operating for thousands of years. They probably have defensive systems we have never seen before. The boarding operation was unlike anything in human military history. The soldiers cut through the hull of the alien ship and found themselves in corridors filled with machinery that seemed to go on forever. The air was filled with strange mechanical sounds and the smell of burning metal. Movement ahead, reported Sergeant. First Class Carol Zhang. Multiple contacts, but they are not moving toward us. The boarding team discovered that the Void Hunter ship was filled with mechanical workers that were trying to repair battle damage. The machines were not designed for combat against armed soldiers inside their own ship. They had no programming for that kind of threat. This is incredible, Major Lane reported back to the fleet. The interior of this ship is like a giant automated factory. There are thousands of worker machines, but none of them are attacking us. They just keep trying to do their jobs, even though we are standing right next to them. Dr. Kim received the reports with excitement. Admiral, this confirms our analysis. The war ended not with explosions or great battles, but with something nobody expected. The Void Hunters simply stopped fighting and left. Muffed. 3 months after the first battle in the Depth Singer system, scout ships reported that the massive mechanical fleet was retreating toward the edge of the galaxy. Admiral Chris Turner stood in the observation deck of Harmony Prime, looking out at the largest gathering of ships in galactic history. Representatives from every coalition species had brought their fleets to the space station. But this time, they were not there to plan evacuations or hiding strategies. They were there to celebrate victory. Final report from the Outer Rim monitoring stations, Lieutenant Rachel Brooks announced. The last Void Hunter ships have crossed the galactic boundary. Long-range sensors show them continuing toward the nearest galaxy cluster, approximately 50,000 light-years away. Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral, joined Chris at the viewing window. Below them, thousands of ships from dozens of different species floated in formation. Human vessels were mixed in with Crystal Singer Harmony ships, Silicon Lord defense platforms, and even the delicate cloud ships of the floating gardens. "I still cannot believe it worked," Jake said. 6 months ago, every species in the galaxy was ready to abandon their homes. Now, they are talking about expanding into new star systems. Dr. Sarah Kim entered the observation deck carrying a thick report. She had spent months studying the captured Void Hunter technology, trying to understand exactly what had happened during the battles. "The analysis is complete," Sarah announced. "We finally understand why the Void Hunters retreated instead of continuing to fight." Chris turned from the window. "What did you find?" Sarah activated a holographic display showing the internal structure of a Void Hunter ship. Their programming is based on mathematical models that have been running for over 10,000 years. These models assume that all organic life follows predictable patterns of behavior. "What kind of patterns?" Jake asked. "When threatened, organic beings either fight or flee. If they fight, they use overwhelming force in direct confrontations. If they flee, they try to hide or escape to safe areas. The Void Hunter programming has responses for both of these behaviors." Dr. Sam Phillips joined the group. He'd been promoted to head of Galactic Defense Research after his analysis of Void Hunter weaknesses proved correct. But humans did something that broke their mathematical models completely. "We attacked using coordinated small units instead of massive formations," Chris said. "We targeted their infrastructure instead of trying to overpower their weapons. We used tactics they had never encountered before." Sarah nodded. "Exactly. But the real breakthrough was psychological. The Void Hunters could not understand why humans would sacrifice individual ships and crews for strategic advantages. Their programming assumes that all organic life seeks self-preservation above everything else." "The sacrifice of the Defiance," Jake said quietly. "Captain Cooper and his crew. That single action caused a cascade failure in their decision-making systems," Sam explained. "The Void Hunter computers spent weeks trying to analyze why organic beings would choose certain death for uncertain strategic gains. They could not find a mathematical solution." Ambassador Lisa Carter entered the observation deck, looking much more relaxed than she had during the crisis months before. The stress lines around her eyes had faded. She was smiling in a way that reminded Chris of his grandmother after a difficult problem had been solved. "The Coalition Council has reached a unanimous decision," Lisa announced. "Every species has agreed to establish the new Galactic Defense Alliance. Humanity will serve as the primary military coordinators, with other species contributing specialized capabilities." "What does that mean in practical terms?" Chris asked. "It means that instead of 47 separate species with 47 different defense plans, we will have one coordinated response system for future threats. The Crystal Singers will handle long-range communications. The Silicon Lords will build monitoring stations at the Galactic Rim. The Depth Singers will use their sonic capabilities for early warning systems." Engineer Tony Clark appeared on the communication screen from his new position on the research station. "Admiral, we have finished reverse engineering the Void Hunter propulsion systems. The technology is actually simpler than we expected, but it is incredibly efficient." "Can we build ships using their technology?" Chris asked. "Better than that, sir. We can improve on their technology." The Void Hunters built their ships to last for thousands of years, but they never upgraded the basic designs. Human engineering. Principals can make their propulsion systems 30% more efficient. Commander Jeff Stone joined the conversation from his new position as head of Fighter Command. Admiral, my pilots have been testing the new ship designs. The improved engines make our fighters twice as fast as anything we had before. Chris felt a sense of satisfaction as he listened to the reports. The victory over the Void Hunters had been just the beginning. In the months since the mechanical fleet retreated, every species in the galaxy had been sharing technology and military knowledge. The result was a level of cooperation that nobody had thought possible. General Paul Davis appeared on another communication screen. Admiral, I have an update from the Outer Rim exploration missions. Scout fleets have made contact with 3 previously unknown species that were hiding from the Void Hunters. Friendly contact? Chris asked. Very friendly, sir. These species have been living in fear for centuries. When they learned that the Void Hunters had been defeated, they immediately requested membership in the coalition. Ambassador Carter smiled. The galaxy is getting bigger every month. We went from 47 species to 61 species in just 3 months. The expansion rate is accelerating as word spreads about the defeat of the Void Hunters. 5 years later, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the new flagship Enterprise. Leading a joint patrol fleet near the Galactic Rim, the ship was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Combining human tactical systems with Crystal Singer communication technology and Silicon Lord defensive capabilities, long-range sensors are detecting an unknown contact, reported Lieutenant Marcus Green. From the sensor station, single vessel, approximately 1 kilometer in length, approaching from outside the galaxy. Jake felt a familiar tension in his chest. Analysis? The ship design is similar to Void Hunter technology, but not identical. It appears to be a probe or scout vessel. Dr. Alina Rodriguez, the ship's science officer, studied the readings carefully. Admiral, this is not a Void Hunter ship. The energy signatures are different. This appears to be from a completely different mechanical species. Another machine? Race? Yes, sir. And based on the probe's behavior, it appears to be investigating reports of what happened to the Void Hunter fleet. Jake activated the fleet communication system. All ships, yellow alert, unknown mechanical probe approaching. Prepare for possible contact with hostile forces. The probe stopped at the edge of sensor range and began scanning the human fleet. For several minutes, both sides observed each other without making any aggressive moves. Sir, reported Communications Officer Lisa Park, the probe is broadcasting a signal. It appears to be some kind of mathematical sequence.
Are they trying
to communicate? Unknown, sir? But the signal pattern is changing. It almost looks like they are asking questions. Dr. Rodriguez analyzed the data streams. Admiral, I think they are trying to understand our ship formations and tactics. The signal patterns suggest they are requesting information about how we defeated the Void Hunters. Jake made a decision. That would have seemed impossible just a few years before. Send them a copy of our tactical database from the Void Hunter War. Show them exactly how we won. Sir, Lieutenant Green looked surprised. If they are another machine race like the Void Hunters, they need to understand that attacking organic species is no longer a safe strategy. If they are peaceful explorers, they deserve to know what happened here. The probe received the tactical data and remained motionless for nearly an hour while its computers processed the information.
Oh, really?
It transmitted a brief signal and began moving away from the galactic rim at high speed. It's analysis of their final transmission, Jake asked. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. It was a mathematical expression that translates roughly to understood and acknowledged. I believe they received our message. Jake watched the probe disappear into the distance. Send a report to Galactic Defense Command. Let them know that our reputation is spreading beyond the galaxy. 2 months later, Jake stood before the memorial wall on Harmony Prime. The wall contained the names of everyone who had died fighting the Void Hunters, with Captain Ryan Cooper and the crew of the Defiance listed at the top. Below their names was an inscription in 47 different languages. The inscription read, "They stood frozen until the Deathworlders took a step forward." Ambassador Carter joined Jake at the memorial. The inscription committee wanted to add more details about the battles and the victory. she said. But I told them this was better. Sometimes the most important truths are the simplest ones. Jake nodded as he read the names on the wall. Do you think it will last? Cooperation? Between all the species,